NBA Finals Game 2 preview. Now, before I get into any numbers or I talk about a box score, I'm going to tell you the way that I like to look at the game. The first way that I look at any game is, how do I see teams mentally approach things? The second thing I look at is, what do I see on the court? And then I look at numbers. So let's start with the Indiana Pacers. As they were exiting game 1 in the tunnel, you could see Siakam and you could see Halliburton talking to each other. And what you could hear them say is, let's get greedy. We didn't even play that well. That tells you that the Pacers' confidence is through the roof. They believe that they can win the NBA Finals. And when you have a team that has nothing to lose, that believes they can win, and right now has the most clutch player in basketball, that is a dangerous recipe. But the Thunder, on the other hand, it's scary to see how they feel, because they feel that the Pacers got extremely lucky. Now, depending on how you view things, you might say the Pacers deserve to win game 1, or you might say that they stole game 1. That's up to you. But what I see is a team that knows they can win the game and that feels like they can crush the Pacers if they just executed a little bit better. So let's get into the numbers. Now, I was surprised when I looked at this box score because I thought the Thunder played a lot better, but I was surprised. So here's what I see. The Thunder shot 39% from the field, 36% from 3, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was the only player on the Thunder who scored 20 or more points. That sounds very shocking, especially because the Thunder were up double digits in the fourth quarter. I thought that I would have seen a couple players with 20 points. I thought that they were shooting at least 35 to 40% from 3 and above 50% from the field. So although they had a really commanding lead 95% of the game, they didn't play their best basketball. They forced a lot of turnovers. They forced 19 turnovers in the first half, but they didn't really convert them to a lot of points. So what that tells me is, if the Thunder can execute 5% better than they did in game 1, this should be an easy victory for them. Now, sometimes we have to look at Vegas too, because Vegas will give you some information. Vegas has more information and more data and more inside tips than we have as regular consumers and viewers. And Vegas right now has the Thunder as 10.5-point favorites. That's a lot of points for an NBA Finals. So what that tells me is, Vegas looked at these numbers and they said, hey, we think the Thunder can play a lot better as well. The Pacers, on the other hand, shot 47% from the field, 46% from 2, and they attempted 9 more three-pointers than the Thunder. So they were relying heavily on the 3-ball. It just wasn't going in as much as they expected until late in the game when they made that run. So this tells me, although we saw the Pacers execute down the stretch, they pretty much played very good basketball by the numbers, at least, with the exception of turnovers. But they were still only to squeak out this win thanks to a clutch miracle shot by Tyrese Halliburton. So what do we think is going to happen in game 2? I'll tell you. I think the Thunder are going to have a different approach. I think they're going to go back to their normal starting 5. They're not going to have Hartenstein come off the bench, which I didn't really understand because he can play and run with the Pacers. And I think they're going to have a more methodical approach where they decide to pick the Pacers apart a bit more than they did in game 1. I also think that they're not going to take their foot off the gas. I said this in my game 1 breakdown. Why are you sitting Shai at the beginning of the fourth quarter when you're only up 12 to 14 points? That's not a comfortable lead, especially when you know you're playing the Pacers. You have to keep your foot on their necks because they're like roaches. They just don't die and they don't go away. You have to squash them and press your foot until the clock hits 0. Because even with 1 second on the clock, that's enough time for Halliburton to do something crazy. So I expect a much more focused and a much more poised Oklahoma City Thunder team, which I thought we would get in game 1, but I think the coach lost them the game. He made an adjustment that didn't need to be made before the game even started. He didn't make good use of his timeouts. He didn't make good substitutions down the stretch. So he has to be better. And if your coach comes in as the leader of the team and prepares you better, I think we're going to see a much, much, much improved performance from the Thunder. And that sounds crazy because they were up for 99.9% of the game up until 0.04 seconds left. But I see the Thunder winning convincingly. They lost to the Nuggets game 1 in the semifinals, and they bounced back in game 2. So I'm going to look for that pattern to repeat. Although we saw the Pacers steal the first 2 games on the road against the Knicks, the Thunder are not the Knicks. They're a lot better. They're a better team. They were better coached. They have more players. They have more depth. They have a better strategy. So I think the Thunder will win this game convincingly. I think they're going to jump out to an early lead and maintain that lead throughout the game. And if it gets close at any point, you better believe he's going to go to his closers early, and it won't be with 8 minutes left. He will close the entire fourth quarter if he needs to with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and J-Dub on the floor.